I went to India with my dad, a second grandpa, and a pseudo uncle who's Indian and also a missionary. While the guys were teaching at a seminar, I went to an orphanage. There were 30 kids. Now when I say 30 kids, that might not sound like a lot, but when they're climbing all over you, I promise, it feels like a lot. One afternoon, when the younger children went to school, I got talking to the woman who essentially runs the place. This woman cooks for 30 kids. She tutors them every morning, and she has 3 additional children of her own. The main question I asked her was why? Why do you do this? Why do you believe God has called you to serve him this way? She told me about a prophecy over her at her wedding, that she'd be surrounded by children that weren't her own. She was confused at the time, but as the years passed, it was clear that she'd be surrounded by the children at the orphanage. I was floored. I couldn't fathom teaching all these kids English every day, and English is my first language. The only Hindi I know is chai, because they sell it at Starbucks. Hepzibah's life is difficult, but she chooses joy every day. Even though you might not have to care for 30 kids every day, we all need to choose joy for 3 reasons. Joy is built through endurance. Life without joy is hopeless, and the joy of the Lord is the strength that we need. The first reason all life needs joy is because joy is built through endurance. Let's start with the definition. Merriam-Webster defines joy as an emotion evoked by well-being, success, or good fortune. Culture around us tells us that we can only be joyful when our lives are perfect. But what happens if our lives aren't perfect? Joy takes time and sacrifices. 2 summers ago was the first time I set foot on the golf course, and I started becoming a caddy. Let me paint a picture for you. I didn't know what par was. I didn't know what a driver was for, and I could barely lift a golf bag. And at the end of the round, the guy was still supposed to pay me. I was humiliated. I never wanted to caddy again. So, when my dad picked me up and asked me how it was, I said it was good, that I liked being outside. I lied. When I got home, I made a plan how not to caddy again. Luckily, I got pneumonia. So the rest of the season, I just said I was too weak. But this summer rolled around, and that wouldn't cut it, and I knew it. So my dad and I went out to lunch to talk about it. I said that everybody there cursed, and that it bothered me. Another lie. And he told me that it was good for me to be around Christians, or be around people who aren't Christians. I told him that it was too hard and that I didn't know anything about golf. He told me it's important that we stick with things that we think are hard, and it was a great way for me to learn the game. I knew he was right. So, this summer I worked hard, and not only did I become a good caddy, but God gave me favor with my bosses. I met a man who taught me about golf, caddying, and life, and I made friends with the other caddies. I learned more than I ever have in my whole life about evangelism. God gave me everything I didn't know I wanted. But it took strength to build joy this summer. It took endurance, but it was never taking the day off or walking up the hill on the 8th hole. James 1:2-3 says this: "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because we know that the testing of our faith produces perseverance." The second reason all life needs joy is because a life without joy is hopeless. I want you to picture a life without joy. It's not pretty. Martin Luther King Jr. said it this way: "Without God, all our efforts turn to ashes, and our sunrise to the darkest nights." Or Billy Graham put it this way: "Life without God is like an unsharpened pencil. It has no point." Sadness, anger, and fear are oftentimes the emotions that stop us from having joy. I'm in a pastor's family. We see a lot of people affected by sadness, anger, and fear. One woman was sexually abused by her uncle, physically abused by her bipolar brother, and her alcoholic mother didn't believe her. Her life had no joy. That's why she tried to take her own life. When she woke up in her hospital bed, she was chained down, and she was angry to be alive. Nobody should be angry to be alive, yet there she was. Shortly after her suicide attempt, she joined a church, got a mentor, and despite her painful circumstances, chose joy. Knowing her now, she's a wife, a mom, a doula, and I've never seen her without a smile on her face. But to me, her biggest accomplishment is the forgiveness of her mother and the fact that she invited her mom to live with her. Her life without Joy was hopeless, possibly worse than the example you imagined. And we're made to be joyful, but as we run the race of life and we jump over the hurdles, joy is stolen from us, or we give it up. We fear that we're not good enough instead of realizing how treasured we are. We run from death instead of embracing life. We push away everyone in our lives instead of trusting the perfectly trustworthy one. We look down from heights instead of looking up to where we go. Psalm 42-3 says this: He pulled me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He placed my feet on solid ground and gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him. The third reason all life needs joy is because the joy of the Lord is the strength that we need. Quote, joy is the holy fire that keeps our intelligence warm and our purpose aglow. Helen Keller. We're told that the only valuable things in this world are the things that we can see. The ironic thing is that it took a blind woman to point out the fact that joy is the holy fire of our purpose and intelligence. In other words, it's one of the most important things. C.S. Lewis wrote, the very nature of joy makes nonsense of our common distinctions between having and wanting. There's no check mark that says whether you have joy or not. About a year ago, I clearly remember texting my best friend and mentor. We do this thing where I can ask anything I want, and that night I asked about self-image. Something that she said that I'll remember forever is this: if God, the creator of the universe and sovereign king over everything, says I'm good enough for him, then I darn well better be good enough for me. Her timing couldn't have been better, because now an hour before, I'd been in my bathroom sobbing while looking in the mirror, and I hadn't eaten in a few days. Every time I saw myself, my head would flood with anger. The fear in the front of my mind was that I wasn't good enough, and that I would never be good enough. With the promise that I will always be good enough for God. The joy will strengthen and sustain me when the lies of fear creep in. We can't rely on ourselves or others to sustain us. We can rely on God to sustain us because he's so much better than us. God has a perfect, permanent, predictable, endless supply of strength and joy. In conclusion, the Lord is the one who's made it possible for us to endure on our quest for joy. The Lord is the one who has made it possible to escape our hopeless futures. And the joy of the Lord is the strength that we need. Originally, the song Joy to the World wasn't just a Christmas song. It was a hymn. People would sing it all the time just to remind themselves to be joyful. There's a line in there that says, let every heart prepare him room. These words are intentional. We have to prepare room in our hearts for joy to be grown in us. I don't fully understand joy, and a part of me hopes I never do. But something I have learned is this: joy is a more powerful emotion than sadness, anger, and fear. In an argument, when we're the most angry and we think we're the most right, is when our judgment is the most clouded, and in reality, we're the most wrong. Joy creates clarity, gets away division, and creates perfection in relationships that are honoring to God. I have no way of knowing what you're lacking joy today. Maybe you've watched a lot of boring speeches, or going home today, you know there's going to be conflict. But whatever it is, will the joy of the Lord be your strength, and to fight for joy.